Now let's cover the two Median Earth theories. Median again standing for in the middle, it's not too old or too young. The post-flood two Median Earth theories. With the first Median Earth theory, creation was before 50,000 years ago, because I'll place the aftermath of the flood in the Upper Paleolithic, which was 50,000 years ago. Now, why would I do this? Because the Upper Paleolithic is the Late Stone Age. After the flood, Shem, Ham, and Japheth and their early descendants would all have to start from scratch. Getting off the ark and roaming the earth, they wouldn't have copper, bronze, or iron tools. Everyone will have to start over, and the first thing you're going to use is stones. And during the Upper Paleolithic, humans were also beginning to develop. According to Britannica.com, Paleolithic period, also called Paleolithic period, also called Old Stone Age, ancient ancestral stage, or level of human development, characterized by the use of rudimentary chipped stone tools. The Paleolithic period is often divided into three parts: lower, middle, and upper. However, anthropologists resist placing hard time boundaries on each subdivision and the stages within them. These technologies, characteristic of different industries, emerged at different times in different regions. In addition, there is some level of overlap between stages and subdivisions because it took time for new technologies to spread, which created the circumstances in which some groups of people had access to higher levels of technology earlier than their contemporaries. The Upper Paleolithic, which saw the emergence of more sophisticated tools, lasted from about 50,000 through 40,000 years ago until about 10,000 years ago. Upper Paleolithic industries exhibited higher complexity, specialization, and variety of tool types, such as those made of bone, ivory, and antlers, and the emergence of distinctive regional characteristic traditions involving paintings and sculpture and musical instruments. According to Thought.com, titled Upper Paleolithic Modern Humans Take the World, it reads, "The Upper Paleolithic, circa 40,000 through 10,000 years, was a period of great transitions in the world. Stone tools of the Upper Paleolithic were primarily blade-based technology. Blades are stone tools that are twice as long as they are wide and generally have parallel sides. They were used to create an astonishing range of formal tools created to specific, widespread patterns with specific purposes. Hunting became specialized, and sophisticated planning is shown by the culling of animals, selective choices by season, and selective butchery. The first hunter-gatherer economy, occasional mass animal killings, suggest that in some places and at some times, food storage was practiced. Some evidence suggests that small groups of people went on hunting trips and returned with meat to the base camp. And according to LiveScience.com, titled Back to the Stone Age, 17 Key Milestones in Paleolithic Life, there were absolutely no modern conveniences like electricity, written words, modern medicine, or the internet, to take just a few developments. But Stone Age humans still did many modern human-like things, such as eating, sleeping, making clothes, and creating music and art, such as this ivory of a human head, known as the Venus of Brasnianponi. So let's take a look at how our ancestors lived and died in the Stone Age. Archaeologists divide the Stone Age into three very broad periods before humans learned to make and use metal tools: the Paleolithic or Stone Age, the Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age, and the Neolithic or New Stone Age. The Upper Paleolithic period dates from between 50,000 and 10,000 years ago, depending on the region. This was the time when autonomically modern humans, Homo sapiens. The Upper Paleolithic period was marked by big changes in stone tools. Instead of the general purpose stone tools used for hundreds of thousands of years, specialized stone tools began to develop for specific tasks, such as hafted axes for cutting wood. This period also saw a big increase in figurative artworks, including cave paintings, rock sculptures, and bone, antler, and ivory carvings. And according to worldatlas.com, titled "What Was the Upper Paleolithic Revolution?", it reads, "The Upper Paleolithic Revolution occurred during the final era of the Late Stone Age between 10,000 and 50,000 years ago, just before the practice of agriculture became widespread. This revolution is characterized by significant changes in human behavioral development that laid the foundation for modern human civilizations. The modern human species began to mobilize, traveling over long distances during this period. The earliest of these migrations was directed to present-day Australia, with humans arriving between 50,000 and 40,000 years ago. This indicates the beginning of seafaring practices. Around the same time, humans in Europe had also advanced to the latitudinal line of 61 north. This was followed by arrival to Japan approximately 30,000 years ago and to the Siberian region around 27,000 years ago. Researchers believe that before this era ended, humans crossed the Bering Land Bridge into North America and gradually migrated south. Human behavior drastically began to change during the Upper Paleolithic Revolution. Though people and cultures maintained a nomadic lifestyle based on hunting and gathering, some populations began to establish permanent human settlements. These settlements are some of the first known organized permanent civilizations. Ancient humans designed these establishments to include sleeping quarters, kitchens, butchery areas, and underground storages in order to preserve food. Art and expression became an important part of society during this revolution. This need to communicate self-identity was expressed through the use of body decorations made of shells, animal teeth, ivory, and even ostrich eggshells. The first cave paintings, petroglyphs, and carvings also date back to this period. Archaeologists have also uncovered human and animal figures fashioned out of clay and stone carvings. Stone tools evolved during this period as well, evolving from more basic to more sophisticated implements. Researchers have discovered many different tools and weapons from this era, including knife blades, engraving instruments, arrow and spear points, and drilling or piercing pieces. Although commonly known as the Stone Age, not all of these artifacts were made of stone. Some discoveries have included bone, antler, or ivory pieces as well. During this time, humans also learned to apply heat to clay objects in order to harden them. Other technological advances were made to increase chances for survival as well. These advances resulted in fish hooks, rope, oil lamps, and eyed needles. So with all of that being said, here is a timeline of major events that occurred in prehistory from the Upper Paleolithic to the modern era. Creation would have been before 50,000 years ago. At some point after creation 50,000 years ago, Adam and Eve would have eaten from the forbidden fruit. The global flood would have happened sometime before the Upper Paleolithic 50,000 years ago. The Upper Paleolithic is when the early descendants of Noah got off the ark and began to use stone tools. From the Upper Paleolithic, we enter the Mesolithic, to the Neolithic, to the Chalcolithic Copper Age, to the Bronze Age, then the Iron Age, and Antiquity, to the Middle Ages, and finally the modern era. The main takeaway is this: true human history starts after the flood, which would be around 50,000 years ago, the Upper Paleolithic or the Late Stone Age. The second scenario of the Median Earth theory is that creation was before 20,000 years ago, because the aftermath of the flood would be the last glacial maximum. Now, why would I say this? Because the last glacial maximum was the last ice age. After the flood, a major ice age would occur from the water coming back down to the earth from the fountains of the deep breaking open. The last glacial maximum is the best example of this event. According to USGS.com, how does present glacial extent and sea level compare to the extent of glaciers and global sea level during the last glacial maximum? It reads, the last glacial maximum occurred about 20,000 years ago during the late phase of the Pleistocene epoch. At that time, global sea level was more than 400 feet lower than it is today, and glaciers covered approximately 8% of Earth's surface, 25% of Earth's land area, and 33% of Alaska. And according to Thought.com, titled An Overview of the Last Global Glaciation, it reads, when did the last ice age occur? The maximum extent of this glacial period was the last glacial maximum, and it occurred around 20,000 years ago. The last glacial period is the most heavily studied and best known portion of the Earth's current ice age, especially with regard to North America and Northern Europe. And according to smartnews.com, titled Scientists Project Precisely How Cold the Last Ice Age Was, and it reads, about 20,000 years ago, miles of icy glaciers stretched across parts of Europe, Asia, South America, and North America, while woolly mammoths, mastodons, and saber-toothed cats roamed the land. And according to ScienceNews.com, titled How Cold Was the Ice Age, researchers now know, it reads, scientists have nailed down the temperature of the last ice age, the last glacial maximum of 20,000 years ago, to about 46 degrees Fahrenheit. A University of Arizona led team has nailed down the temperature of the last ice age, the last glacial maximum of about 20,000 years ago, to about 46 degrees Fahrenheit. The last glacial maximum was a frigid period when huge glaciers covered about half of North America, Europe, and South America, and many parts of Asia, while flora and fauna that were adapted to the cold thrived. And according to Haaretz.com, titled How Cold Was the Last Ice Age, the answer may surprise you. It reads, at the peak of the real ice age, called the last glacial maximum around 20,000 years ago, ice sheets covered much of the northern hemisphere. We also know that the start of the glacier's retreat differed from place to place. It seems Siberia's ice began to pull back about 17,500 years ago, but extreme cold persisted for thousands of years longer in Western Europe. So about 20,000 years ago, when the last glacial maximum was at its peak, the thick-furred megafauna tracked the snowy lands. The average global temperature was 6 degrees Celsius, colder than now, estimates the team led by Associate Professor Jessica E. Tenney of the University of Arizona, Tucson, in a report in Nature on Wednesday. And lastly, according to LiveScience.com, titled Pleistocene Epoch, the Last Ice Age, it reads, the Ice Age peaked during the last glacial maximum, about 20,000 years ago, when the glaciers covered vast swaths of North America, Europe, South America, and Asia. At that time, global temperatures were about 11 degrees Fahrenheit, 6 degrees Celsius, lower than they are today, according to a 2020 study published in the journal Nature. Ice Age conditions were also drier than today, because most of the water on Earth's surface was ice. There was little precipitation. Rainfall was about half of current levels. The sea level was much lower, and the shorelines was typically much further out because glaciers trapped water in ice sheets, according to the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. The last ice age is known for hosting many large mammals called megafauna. Mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, and mastodons roamed North America during this period, according to Florida Museum of Natural History. But it wasn't just large mammals. An 11-foot tall, flightless bird that weighed almost as much as a polar bear inhabited Europe during the early Pleistocene. Live Science precisely reported. Meanwhile, Megalania prislea, the largest known terrestrial lizard, lived in open forests, woodlands, and other Pleistocene inhabitants across much of eastern Australia during the epoch, according to the Australian Museum in Sydney. So here's the timeline of major events from the last glacial maximum to the modern era. So creation would have been before 20,000 years ago. At some point after creation 20,000 years ago, Adam and Eve would eat from the forbidden fruit. The global flood would have happened before the last glacial maximum 20,000 years ago. From the last glacial maximum, we enter the Young Dryas, to the Mesolithic, to the Neolithic, to the Chalcolithic, Copper Age, to the Bronze Age, then the Iron Age and Antiquity, to the Middle Ages, and finally the modern era. The main takeaway is this: true human history starts after the flood 20,000 years ago, from Noah to us today, the last glacial maximum, the last ice age. Now, with all of that being said, the two main points that you need to understand for the Median Earth ages is this. 1. Creation was before 50,000 years ago, and the flood was around 50,000 years ago during the Upper Paleolithic. And 2. Creation was 20,000 years ago, and the flood was around 20,000 years ago, which is the last glacial maximum. So, summary and conclusion. The hydroplate theory proves the global flood, and the global flood and the hydroplate theory proves the ice age and a mass extinction event, followed by the Stone Age and human development, which all can prove the age of the earth, beginning from Noah to us today, depending on how old you believe the earth is. With all of that being said, choose whichever model best fits for your world view. With that being said, have a blessed day and shalom.